And that segues me into the next topic that we have. Now, it's funny when we decide, when we typically decide what we're going to talk about on this show, we kind of formulate a script throughout the week after we stop recording Monday night. If Katie sees something, she'll add it to the list. If I see something, I'll add it to the list. And then over time, if either one of us doesn't want to talk about a topic, then we can essentially let the other know and it'll be removed. Okay? And the reasons don't matter. If Katie don't want to talk about something, it's removed, period. I don't say, oh, how come? It's just that way, right? So the funny thing about this week is I had comic book movies on the list before the Doctor Doom thing happened. And then the Doctor Doom thing happened, and I was like, holy shit, that's dope. And then another topic I had, obviously the big thing happening in the world right now is the Olympics. And we were just going to talk about the Olympics and whether we watch them and what sports excite us and all of that. And then all of the shit hit the fan, right? All of the shit hit the fan. And now we actually have something controversial about the Olympics to talk about. And we talked about this off air. We are going to talk about factual things on this show. And feelings won't matter here. We are just going to hit you with the facts. And if you don't like it, that's okay. You don't have to consume it. You don't have to agree with it. And again, move on. Okay? But here are the facts as I know them. And a lot of research done on this. So whether you believe in what happened or not, whether you agree with it, what happened, especially the basis of what happened. I watched the opening ceremony live, first of all, because I'm a frickin' nerd and I love the Olympics, okay? Absolutely love the Olympics. So when the opening ceremony starts, I know when it is, and I have 3 hours put aside for that reason. Because I love to learn culture, right? When the Olympics were in Beijing, I learned so much about Chinese culture that I didn't know. And because of that, I feel like I'm a better human being for it, because I know more about Chinese culture. When they were in London, same thing. When they were in Athens, etc. Well, this year's is in Paris. So I expected probably something a little extraordinary, because that's what Parisians do. That's what French do, right? So going in, you have to expect something a little off. It's always that way in France. And that's not typically a bad thing. It's just their culture. So here are the facts. It wasn't the Last Supper. The director of the entire ceremony has apologized, and a lot of people in the Christian community are thinking, because the director apologized, that means they admit wrongdoing. But an apology does not mean it's an admittance of malice. It just simply is a diplomatic way of saying, I'm sorry you feel that way. And that's exactly what this apology is. If you go in and actually look at the apology, listen to the words spoken, he doesn't admit that the purpose of it was a mockery of the Last Supper. In fact, he says quite the opposite. We did not intend for this to be seen as the Last Supper. If you watched the event live, there's no way you could have possibly seen this as Last Supper, because they weren't sitting at a table. First of all, the only reason why people think, this is opinion, the only reason why people think this is a mockery of the Last Supper is because somebody took a snapshot at a certain time of the video and then did a side-by-side video with the painting of the Last Supper. Period. That's my opinion. Here's the facts as the ceremony happened. Okay? Number one, it was not the depiction of the Last Supper. It was a depiction of an ancient Greek bacchanal. Now, a bacchanal is it's kind of like a party. It was a loud, extravagant party that the ancient Greeks would have. The Olympics, ancient and Greek. Hello. Anyway,
Who would have thought?
the parties often spanned several days, and honestly, back in the day when the first Athenians were having Olympics, they would start their Olympics, their games, with a bacchanal. And those bacchanals would last 3, 4, 5, 6, sometimes up to 20 days before the games even started. So the athletes back then were probably absolutely in great shape for the Olympic Games in the first couple of years, right? Now, these parties are named after Bacchus. Bacchanal, Bacchus. Bacchus is the blue guy that you guys will see in your side-by-side pictures that everybody thinks is a mockery of Jesus. It's actually Bacchus, who is the blue guy that is covered in grapes or grapevines. Also known as Dionysus, who is the Greek god version of Bacchus. Now, Dionysus is the Greek god of fertility, also known as the god of wine and pleasure. Okay? All of those things are depicted as part of this bacchanal that you saw as part of the opening ceremony. And finally, you will also see what people were calling the death on a pale horse. You could see that as part of this mockery of the Last Supper. No, it's not death on a pale horse. It's actually Sequana, who is the goddess of the Seine, which is the river that they were doing the opening ceremony on, the athlete procession. That's where it took place, is on the River Seine. Now, Sequana has always been, not just this year, not just 4 years from now, she has always been the representation of the Olympic spirit. So she's always been highly, highly connected to the Olympic Games over a lot of time. Simply speaking, everybody out there, in my opinion, this is opinion now, everything I just stated is a fact. Okay, this is what you saw was a bacchanal. It was people, lots of them, not 12 disciples, not whatever. It was 19, 20, 18 people, thank you. And that was just on the one side of the runway. There were more people on the other side of the runway, which if you had saw the opening ceremony, you would have known that. And in the Last Supper, there are not people on the left-hand side of the table. They are only on the opposite side of the table from the perspective of the artist. Or on the table, correct. But if you watched the ceremony when it happened, there were people on both sides of the runway, and there were models walking down the runway like a fashion show. Okay? Nothing to do with the Last Supper. The only way you could possibly see that is because somebody saw that still shot or snapshot as part of the procession or the runway, took a picture of it, did a side-by-side, and then everybody's pissed off. Okay? And that's okay. You're allowed to be pissed off. You're allowed to cancel the Olympics. You're allowed to not watch them. You're allowed to boycott the things you don't like. That's okay. That's fine. But trying to say that it's because of a reason when that reason has been disproven, factually disproven, I mean, I don't know what to say about that except for, I feel like a lot of people had knee-jerk reactions. And I think some people might be regretting putting their knee-jerk reactions out there. I don't know, man. Religion is supposed to be a little more loving than that, I thought. Anyway, what say y'all?
I think it's so crazy. Like, the things that we make a spectacle out of the things that we don't. For example, that side, or the people that are religious, the more right-wing people, right? Which tend to be Christians, you know. Just the morals kind of go together, right? And that's close to factual. Anyway, not the point. Mm-hmm. We were all just fixated on Trump almost getting assassinated. What happened to that? No one gives a flying f***. Now all you see is the Olympics. That was like 2 weeks ago? Last week? I don't know, some shit like that. I can't keep up. But no one gives a shit now. And that's huge.
I think people still care. But go ahead.
The maxi pad companies care. Their sales are way up.
Now, a couple of things. I'll tell you something that gets me a little bit is, again, I have to reiterate, I watched this live. I watched it live. I enjoyed the entire ceremony. There wasn't anything in the ceremony I did not enjoy. I thought it was very well done. There are things that I have seen that have come out on the internet that I did not catch when I watched it because I wasn't watching it in slow motion and trying to find anything to offend myself on it. Okay? But there are some things that have been pointed out that I'm not for. For example, apparently there is a drag queen whose pantyhose or fishnets were tore, and supposedly his testicles were showing through the fishnets, and he was standing next to a child. And this was part of the runway scene as well. I've seen still photos of that. I've watched it back. And yeah, it could be his testicles, but probably not. Okay? Now, I will say, if his testicles are hanging out and he's standing next to a child, then somebody should get in trouble for that shit. Okay? Yeah. Before anybody tries to throw me under a moving vehicle.
That was on TV.
Right. And honestly, I wouldn't want my kids to see that shit, okay? Firstly. But for me, I feel like, and this will go to what Kadie was just trying to say, I don't think people are upset that God was mocked. I think people are upset of who was doing their perceived mocking. That it was drag queens. That it was men dressed as ladies. That it was clearly a blue guy. And just trying to make comparisons when there were none there.
Literally none.
The Last Supper painting is one of the most parodied pieces of art in human history. You can literally go to Google right now, type in the words Last Supper parody, and you will see hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them.
I saw one the other day of all cats. It was pretty amazing.
There's a Disney princess one. There's one right down the road in Texas at LSA Burger that depicts the most iconic Texas figures, including Willie Nelson and Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Right.
So,
see, and you know what? I loved it so much. So two things, which are high in my book. They had Celine Dion.
Absolutely. And Lady Gaga.
And then they had Gohira.
Yes.
They had Gohira.
And Lady Gaga was fantastic as well, by the way.
That's true.
Say what, Toby?
I said Mary Antoinette beheaded before GTA 6. Crazy.
Yeah, Marie Antoinette.
Dude,
Marie.
Gohira, I was like, what? That is nuts. Because I actually do like Gohira. Me and Jackson listen. They're not like,
cool.
Yeah, they're fucking awesome.
I thought that presentation was great.
And they're from France. I thought all of that was cool. And then, Celine Dion's French Canadian, isn't she?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I thought that was really
She was amazing. It was so good to see her. Honestly, it was so good to see her.
Wasn't Katy Perry there or something?
I didn't see her. Lady Gaga performed, though.
That might have been... Somebody was saying that they should have used... I don't know exactly who was there, but I know whatever they said, they were mad that it wasn't like a well-known French pop artist. But then again, my response to them would be, name me one notable French pop artist that is still alive, for one, and two, still singing. You can't, because there isn't one.
I mean, first of all, that's all about perspective, Toby. We're not from France, so they probably have famous artists that we don't know about that are famous to them. You know what I mean?
But this is a worldwide event, so I get what you were saying.
But it's still cultural, and it's still very French. Right. It's meant to depict French culture, the French way of life, etc. Yeah. I'm just going to say one last thing before we move on from this. I just want to be very, very clear. We talked about this at the end of the Ava Chris Tyson thing. I am personally not a Christian. I used to be a Christian. I am personally not a Republican. I used to be a Republican. Those are all true things. I am in a different place personally now than I was when I was those people, right? I don't necessarily agree with some of the viewpoints that Christians have, and I don't necessarily agree with some of the viewpoints that Republicans have. I do agree with some as well. The point I will make is, if a Christian or a Republican says or does something that I don't agree with, and it doesn't hurt another human being, then I scroll by. I stay in my lane, and I don't partake with it, because it has nothing to do with me or my way of life. Now, if it hurts somebody, If it's misinformation or disinformation, or it's an open attack on somebody's way of life or just somebody's right to exist, that I take umbrage with, and I might say something just to be like, yo, that's not cool. But I'm not going to openly tell a Christian they're wrong. I'm not openly going to tell a Republican they're wrong. I wouldn't do the same thing to an atheist or a Democrat or a liberal or a Frenchman or a Greek or a Brazilian. I'm not going to do or a lesbian or a gay person or a transgender person or an interracial marriage. I'm not going to tell any of those people what they're doing is wrong, whether I agree with them or not, because their way of life has nothing to do with mine. And as long as we continue to try to put our noses into the people's lives that don't matter to us, then this world is going to be divided like this. And we're going to have knee-jerk reactions. Because the people that are in charge of all this propaganda and putting misinformation out there knows that by doing that, they are dividing us further. And they want us divided because they're afraid of us united. And that's the way it is, in my opinion.
And I agree on that. I have said this quite a few times reading like on Facebook, and really when this whole shit hit the fan. Who cares this much? Who cares this much? Like, this is so exhausting. About the Olympics. Mm-hmm. This is worse than politics almost right now. Like,
it's all political. I mean, to be honest, it's political. You know,
yeah, and it's dividing so many people for just such bullshit reasons. Agreed. Who cares? Who cares? If you don't like it, move on.
Well, I mean, we live in Texas. All three of us have people that we all care about very, very much, that are Christian, that are Republican, that are Democrat, that are members of the LGBTQI community. All three of us, I'm sure, we're all nodding, care about people that all have every label that I just said. And we love them, and we don't want to be divided with them. We don't want to be, away from them. And if those people that we care about say or do something that we don't agree with, we still love them. We still care about them. We just don't agree. And that's okay. Again, like I said, as long as it doesn't hurt somebody, because opinions can hurt. Disinformation can hurt. Misinformation can hurt. It ends up killing people. It just does. And we have to be careful what we say, especially in the internet age where accountability is in short supply.